back to the Rugby Connection podcast. As always, covering all the rugby that's gone on over the past week. Now, it's a bit of a different one this week because we are without Murray, who usually pulls the strings and organises everything. So he sort of left us alone, which is a terrible idea. I'm joined by Harv. He's back.
Hey.
And then, once again, not for the first time on the Rugby Connection podcast, but for the first time with me, Marcello's joined us again.
Hello, Cam. How are you, mate? The last time I was on this pod was previewing Zebra against Sharks and saying that Zebra were going to win their losing streak against the Sharks in the URC. And what happened?
I personally don't remember that.
He's blocked it out.
Memory with those things.
Yeah,
I do know that Zebra versus Sharks is happening again soon, so
it is,
see what happens there. But
you probably get your chance at revenge then. To be fair,
fingers crossed, because that scarred me for life.
Yeah,
we'll start with, because we had the final round of the pools with both the European competitions. I will start with the Challenge Cup, as we usually do, the little Babby competition. And on the Friday night, we had Gloucester hosting Cast, 35-5. Scarlets hosted Edinburgh, and I predicted the Scarlets give Edinburgh a bit of a hard run, but 31-19, the Welsh regions, as expected, haven't done too well in this competition. The Black Lions, once again, struggling to find that magic that they found against Gloucester and Scarlets. They get pretty handily beaten by Clermont, 36-3. Pau versus Zebra. This was a good game. And I think we'll talk about this game quickly, because one thing about Zebra I will say, and yes, I know, a bit bitter that the Sharks lost them and whatnot, they have improved a hell of a lot this season. They improved last season, especially towards the start of the season, where you thought they've got to be getting a win at some point. But they've had wins this season.
Yeah, they have. And I think they could have probably had a few more. I mean, in that first block of 4 games of the URC season, they should have beaten Ulster in the first game, literally have a 5-metre scrum in the 80th minute on the Ulster line. Should win that game. Could have easily beaten Ospreys as well away from home. We knew this Zebra side were going to be a totally different team this season. And it's good to see that they're sort of competing on all fronts. And that game at the weekend, bit of game management potentially, and maybe kicking points when they should kick points and trying to score a try close to the post. These sorts of things. That game could have ended completely differently. And there was a point in that game when I thought Zebra had control and ultimately had the game in their hands. And I think I'll be really disappointed that they didn't win. However, getting a couple of bonus points, results elsewhere help them out, and they get through. And both Italian franchises through to the round of 16 in the Challenge Cup is massive for Italian rugby. It's massive for both clubs, and we're in club form going into Six Nations. These players are really flying. So it's fair to say we're quietly confident and hopeful of what might come out in the next couple of months.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, talking about both the Italian franchises, the next game we have a bit of a different story, because Benetton versus Montpellier, expected Benetton get the win 27-19. Benetton have been flying very high this season. They're sitting second on the log in the URC. They finished top of their pool in the Challenge Cup. I mean, Harv, you'll know that we have a bit of a running joke about Benetton, that Rainbow Cup champions, we love them. Benetton are the greatest team to ever exist. But this season, they're actually looking like the real deal. Is Harv still with us?
I am. Sorry, mate.
You are. I thought we lost you there, mate.
Benetton have completely shocked me this year. I mean, second in URC, we know they've always been around mid-table-ish. If they can hit some surprises, maybe. This year they've just blown everyone out of the water, and it's going to be quite an interesting battle for that Scots Italian Shield against Glasgow, who have been high flying as well. So that will probably be one of the things I'm looking out for by the end of the season. If not, I'd love to see Benetton go all the way. I think all of us would. But I don't know. There's something in the back of my mind that says that this is only quite short lasted.
There might be a choke
There
coming
might
up.
be a bit of a dip, yeah.
You do look at their team sheet, and you look at the names on that team sheet, and it is screaming quality. You've got a good chunk of the Italian national squad. You've got big names like Fekatoa just hanging about in there. And then you've got a couple of Argentinian internationals thrown in there as well. So it's a very quality team. And I think this season they've just clicked and everything's worked for them. And I think there is that sort of transfer from those internationals, especially that core part of the Italian squad, which is just bringing a bit of that structure, because Italy also on the international scene have been on, yes, a bit of an up and down, but it has been a gradual rise. So, Benetton, we sort of have to sit back and wait to see what they can do this season. If they can go all the way in the URC, I think they're very strong contenders for the Challenge Cup. So
they'll win it. They'll win it.
They have to get past the Sharks first.
No, they'll win it. They'll win it. Especially, I think they can get a nice home run together as well. I think at home they're so hard to beat. I think if the draw's kind, I think they go all the way. I really do. I think they're more than good enough. And I mean, what a season so far. And the first few games of the URC season, Benetton had their internationals out and were still, putting the results together. And like you said, we've got Benetton have those imports. They've got those foreign players in that side that when the Italians do go, I still think they're a strong squad. And I don't think there'll be too much of a dip during the Six Nations that maybe in previous years we've seen. So, there is the sky's the limit for this Benetton side. It really is. But I think we can give URC a really good go. But the Challenge Cup, I think, is a bit more of a realistic target.
You make me sweat here as a Sharks fan. We'll move on because we had Oyonnax versus the Cheetahs, the Amsterdam Cheetahs, as we've been calling them. The Cheetahs not finding their form against Oyonnax. Close game, 28-27, but they've fallen short of the two French sides in their pool. Move on to the Sunday where we had, for me, maybe the game of the round in the Challenge Cup was the Lions versus the Ospreys. Because I honestly, watching this, I thought the Ospreys were dead and buried. Going to Johannesburg, going to any of the South African teams, but especially Pretoria and Johannesburg, altitude, I thought the Ospreys were dead and buried. But what a comeback in the dying minutes in the last, I think, what was it? Keelan Giles goes over on the 72nd minute, and then we get 2 tries after that, which pushes them to a 10-point lead after being at a 10-point deficit.
Yeah, Toby Booth's done a great job.
Amazing.
Good job.
I was sitting there because obviously I was backing the Lions because I back the South African teams when they're playing at any of the abroad teams. But I was sort of just sitting there gobsmacked, and I was like, fair play, because obviously the Welsh teams haven't been doing too well. Cardiff in the Champions Cup, and then you got the Scarlets and the Dragons also in the Challenge Cup here. It's not been a good run. It's not been a good run for a while for Welsh rugby. But the Ospreys are sort of holding the fort of it. And they do get round of 16 qualification. So at least they're having someone go off into the playoffs. For the Lions, they just fell asleep. Yeah, the defence crumbled, and there's not much more to say. They're a young, inexperienced team. They've been clicking this season well, but if you sort of just fall asleep, a team like Ospreys, they've got quality talent. They're gonna capitalize. Talking about teams who haven't been doing too well this season, Newcastle Falcons get their first win of the season, not only in the Challenge Cup, but also in the Premiership. So first win of any fixture in the season against Perpignan, 32-23, and they did it away from home. How did they do that then?
French sides in the Challenge Cup generally just couldn't give less of a shit, did they?
It does feel like that, doesn't it? It does feel like that. But honestly, Newcastle have been so woeful this season that I could have seen them going for the winless season. in all games.
I don't even think they've been awful. Like
No.
defensively, all right. They haven't shipped too many. It's always been tight encounters. I think it's a lot of unluckiness.
Just
They
been
have
not going their way this season.
they have got some star quality. I'm talking about individuals. We're not talking about a whole team here.
Yeah.
They are probably the weakest side in the Premiership, but there is some star quality in that. They're going to lose them next season, which doesn't bode well. But I don't know. Newcastle have been. I mean, I went to see them against Exeter. They were so close to winning that day.
Yeah.
Defensively, very, very sound, very, very structured. On the attack, again, they've got fast breakaway players, in their backline. There's just a little bit of, there's just odd patches in the team that just isn't as strong as everywhere else. And that's, they almost just don't have a consistent spine.
Yeah, it's inexperience as well. They don't. I think they're quite a youthful, inexperienced side, and I think up front and in that pack they haven't got a lot going for them. Like you said, they've got sort of a bit of star quality out wide, but then there's that old saying, isn't it? The forwards win you the games, and I just don't think they've got a pack to match the Premiership at this point in time. So, but I mean, they definitely deserved. It would have been really harsh, and I don't think anyone would have enjoyed seeing them go a whole season without winning. And I hope in the Premiership they do find a way to break that duck as well. But yeah, I mean, I haven't. I watched a bit of the highlights of that game, but I didn't watch too much of it. But good to see them. Good to see them get a win in France as well. And I'm sure they had a good evening of it.
Do you know what's also good to see, boys? Is my beloved Sharks getting a bonus point win away from home, putting us top of the seed, home playoff in the round of 16 against a certain Italian team that we need a bit of revenge for. Yeah, listen, Dragons versus Sharks. I'll say a few words. I won't go on about this because, listen, for the first half an hour, it was woeful. Yes, the weather didn't help too much. We've been having some pretty strong winds, some pretty awful weather here in Wales. But overall, not even using that excuse, it was woeful. The Dragons looked to be the dominant team. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't even get a pass to hand. But it's just the second half performances for us have been a bit of a thing throughout. I think the last two seasons. We showed it against the Dragons last time we played them, where we sort of completely blew them out of the water in the second half. And we did it again this time to a bit of a smaller scale. But again, last 10 minutes and Grobler goes over, man of the match, well-deserved, absolute workhorse. If there's one guy in the forward pack that we need to keep hold of, it's this guy. Then LaRue Roots goes over on the 78th minute. And then Werner Koch, with the most shithouse try I've ever seen, goes over on the 80th. It does inflate the lead a bit. It does give us that bonus point. I'd argue the score doesn't correctly reflect the game because I don't think we were dominant in any fashion other than that sort of last 15 minutes or so. But it's a win away from home, which wins have been hard to come by for the Sharks this season. And it's a bonus point win, and it sets us top of the seed into the round of 16 and gives us a little bit of a better pathway to make it into those big knockout games.
Does it?
And I will say the Dragons were unlucky with the disallowed try. I would have said, that was grounded with his chest, which by the rules is fine. But I won't argue with it being disallowed. I'll just say that much. But we'll just quickly have a look at the round of 16. Is it going to show me on here?
Suspense is killing me.
Suspense is killing me.
It's
I thought
incredible.
Flashball would show it to me, but it doesn't. Anyway,
it does. I've got it up, mate. I've got it up.
Go on, Half. Take it away.
Right. So, of course, we know Sharks are playing Zebra in round of 16, first versus 16th seed. Winner of that will play Edinburgh versus Bayonne. Clermont versus the Cheetahs will play Montpellier or Ulster. Gloucester or Castres will play Ospreys or Sale, and Benetton and Lyon will play Pau or Connacht.
Just quickly, boys, I know we've still got knockout games for them to qualify for, but just quickly, at the round of 16, what final do we expect to see? Who do we expect to see in the final?
I'm saying Benetton are getting there.
I'm saying Benetton are getting there. I'm saying the Sharks are getting there. And I'm saying it's going to be a Sharks-Benetton final.
So is it, Harv, what side of the draw? So I know Benetton's on the one side, the other side of the draw. What are those teams again?
Which side are you talking about? The one with
the side with Ospreys in it.
Oh, side with Ospreys. Yeah, so Gloucester, Castres, Ospreys, Sale, Benetton, Lions, Pau or Connacht.
I mean, you got to look at. I mean, Lyon are a force, aren't they? No one will enjoy going to Sale, particularly because no one does. Yeah, I mean, and then for the South African side, it's just the Sharks, right? Is it?
There are the Cheetahs hanging about in there.
I didn't even know they still existed. I
yeah, to be honest, same. In the nicest way possible.
They're the Curry Cup champions.
They turned up and dicked Zebre in the first game, and I thought, well, where on earth did this team come from? Didn't even know they existed. Crazy.
We just made them up.
In terms of a final, I'd say Clermont Benetton.
Boring. Well, it wouldn't be a boring game. It'd be a brilliant game, but it's going to be
incredible. I think maybe I just want to see the spectacle, especially in London.
That would be a spectacle.
On my own patch, that would be a decent roundup of games.
Sure.
I'm sticking with my guns. I'm going a Sharks Benetton final. Bias is in there.
I was about to say I could. It stinks of bias, but
yeah, I generally think Benetton can get there. There are some good sides left, especially in that side of the draw. So I'll have to wait and see. I know Gloucester have been woeful in the Premiership. They've been pretty decent in the last couple of games in the Challenge Cup. I don't necessarily them at home. Them at Kingsholm on a European night. I think is still a force. I don't think they qualified second, didn't they? They were second seed in the end. I mean, I think Sharks scoring another try against Dragons meant that Zebra didn't play Gloucester. And I could. Gloucester's about 30 minutes. Gloucester's 30 minutes from me, so I could have gone and watched that game. So thoroughly miffed that you guys scored again, and now Zebra have got to go to fucking South Africa.
He's fuming.
Like I said, it's no longer European Challenge Cup. Just get them out.
Yeah, just the Challenge Cup.
Just because we're finishing top of the pools and whatnot.
You've ruined it, Cam. That's what you've done. You've ruined it.
Okay, we've ruined you. We've ruined your little European party. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Genuinely, as an ambassador of South Africa, I'll extend my hand of apology.
Unofficial ambassador.
Unofficial ambassador. No, I was sent by Razzie Erasmus himself. But I'm not sorry because I just quite like beating European teams. It's sort of one of my pastimes. But
it's not worked too well in the URC though, was it, Cam? In fairness, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm a Stormers, Bulls, or Lions supporter in the URC at the moment.
Yeah.
We'll go on to all this talk about Europe. We'll go on to the big boy, the European Champions Cup. The Friday matches, we had Connacht finally getting a win at home, 27-10 against Bristol, because they've not been able to get a win in this Champions Cup. And we had Glasgow getting a massive win, revenge for them, 29-5 against Toulon. A repeat of the Challenge Cup final last year, where Toulon just put Glasgow to the sword. It wasn't even fair. I suppose they did have Sergio Parise on, just top form. But yeah, 29-5, Glasgow get their revenge there. Jump over to the Saturday, where for me, game of the round was Bulls versus Bordeaux, because once again, this time they didn't quite make it enough to take the lead, but Bordeaux's comeback was absolutely insane. The Bulls were flying high in the first half. You thought Bordeaux were dead and buried, but then in the second half, a try started. Well, it all started with Mados Tambwe scoring against his old team, and then it was just a flood of tries. The Bulls managing just about to get away with it with a couple of penalty goals from Van der Veld, putting them the 6 points in front. But what a game. What a game, and what a quality side Bordeaux have come out to be this season.
Yeah, I was going to say Bordeaux are some team. That game is nuts, by the way. 46-40, that is bonkers.
That is see, that's why we have the South African teams in the European competition.
Here we go again. My
because
God.
where else would we have seen a game like that? Bulls versus Bordeaux, 46-40. That's the best game of the round, Harv.
Oh, I don't know about that. Northampton-Munster was pretty good.
Yeah, I was about to say. That probably rivals it. Not as big a scoreline, but...
teams. It's Bordeaux and Bulls. They sound exciting. Northampton versus Munster doesn't sound too exciting.
We can tell who's not European on here.
I'm going to anger a lot of people after this episode. No, but Bordeaux, I mean, you look at that team sheet, you look at the quality. They've got both, probably, I'd say, both of France's starting wingers in Bialberry and Penaud. Jalibert is on the form of his life at the moment, playing with them, which is a bit of a scary prospect for everyone else going into the Six Nations. We have Maxime Lucu, which I assume is going to be France's, first string scrum half, maybe alongside a Laguerre or something like that. But that Bordeaux team is very scary, very scary. And I mean, all you need to do is look what they did to Saracens the week before, and yeah, it just tells you all you need to know. Harv, since you're back, we have our resident Harlequin supporter back. Talk to me a bit about 47-19 over Ulster.
It's good.
Oh wow.
No.
Good review.
I was expecting a much tighter game. Ulster have kind of been bullying us. I think the stat was they beat us out of our last 8 meetings. They've beaten us 6 times, and 3 of them were at the Stoop. So that's me thinking, oh God, our home qualification is going to go to absolute pot. 20 minutes in, scores a level. You kind of think, oh. We did defend that. We did defend the yellow card really well. We did let in the 1 try, but I'd say for the most part defended really, really well. And then Harlequins just went full Harlequins and played their hearts out.
Just did some bullshit stuff.
Yeah,
talk about Louis Liner, please.
We can talk about him.
How good that first try. I know he gets a bit of luck with the bounce of the ball, but oh man.
I mean, we haven't seen him, I'd say, at his best for a few years now. But to see this today was so refreshing. I say today, Saturday. But yeah, just back at his best, doing what he does well. It's so refreshing, and just knowing that we've still got those fresh electric legs going through our back line just gives me so much confidence, and hopefully to actually make it far in this competition for once.
Yeah. Good. But we'll move on, because, listen, Harv talking about Harlequins is painful for my ears. Aren't you glad to be back? Aren't you glad to be back? We had the one fixture, which is... it's just confusing, because we had Leicester versus Leinster. Plenty of muddle-ups there, where Leicester Tigers at Welford Road hosting the ever-mighty Leinster. Ended up being 27-10 to the bastards in blue, as I've come to coin them.
And it ends up they're playing each other again.
Oh, we'll get to that because there's been a bit of controversy.
Yeah, this is yeah.
How many opportunities do Leicester, I'll call the Tigers, do the Tigers need to be given to score points and just not take them?
They're not a test team. Let's be real.
No, Leinster. I mean, Leinster are literally an international test team. They are.
Yeah.
Their seaside is a test team.
Oh no, 100%. But no, watching this game, like the first half, Leicester looked good. Second half, Leicester looked lost. I'd say, as much as I love the guy, he is my goat. Andre Pollard looked a bit lost in the second half. Didn't really know what was going on. Wasn't able to pull the strings, and the Tigers just fell apart. And against opposition like Leinster, if you get a bit lost, they're going to hurt you. So yeah, 27-10 was the final score. Not as bad as it could have been. We'll move on to Racing versus Cardiff. 48-26 in favour of Racing. That guy, Legaric, scrum half for Racing, he's been named in the French squad. He impresses me more and more every week. I think even with the loss of Dupont, I don't think France are going to struggle one bit with the scrum halves that they have coming up anyway. We'll go on to the game that you boys were talking about, Northampton versus Munster, 26-23. And okay, fine, it was a good game. Not as good as Bulls versus Bordeaux, but it was a very good game. And Northampton proving once again that they are contenders for this competition.
14 men. That's however long as well. To go to
14 men from for the second half, the whole of the second half, 14 men.
That's nuts to be able to go to Munster and be able to do that. This Northampton team are just flying, and Finn Smith, the former Worcester boy, just having a whale of a time.
I was just about to say, all off the boot of Finn Smith in that, mostly in that second half. He's a brilliant fly half. And I mean, we're all waiting for him to either get named in the England squad or the Scotland squad. He has been named in the England squad, so we are going to see him hopefully, get a few minutes in the Six Nations. We'll go on to the most confusing game that I've watched in a while, because Stade Francais hosted the Stormers in a 24-20 win for the Stormers, where there was much confusion about how many players were allowed on the pitch when scrums went to uncontested. The rule is if you lose your front row, so say you've subbed out your front row, and then both your replacement props then have to come off, or you don't have another specialist tight head or loose head, blah blah blah. You go to uncontested scrums because it's not safe. It's not safe to contest without a specialist. But then you also have to lose an additional player, which would bring you down to 13. Now that was the big discussion here. Stade Francais, Sekou Makalu couldn't quite grasp the concept that they had to go down to 13 players. Then they let play continue. They still had 14 players. Then they stopped play. They went back. Then they had to make sure they had 13 players again. And then they carried on. It was all just a mess. People said the officiating was terrible. I felt a bit for the officiating in this game, because honestly, I was watching it and I was confused. I didn't know what the hell was going on.
It's probably one of the most difficult things to officiate. We saw it last year in the Ireland-Italy game. I think there was a lot of confusion around it, just because I don't think a lot of people have grasped their heads around the laws on that.
Well, no, I remember Michele Lamro not being impressed with having to go down to 13.
Well, no, I understand why it's in place, but whether it seems unfair, there's so much debate about it, and I think it is extreme. It's an extreme case, because not usually do you get situations where you haven't got any sort of scrum specialists on the pitch. But I don't know. It just seems like a bit of a I understand why the rule's in place. It's for the safety of the players. Yes, 100%. I just think it needs to be outlined better to the players, maybe, because
Yeah,
it seems as if some of them don't even understand.
yeah. It was like that Italy game you talked about. Wasn't last year, it was the year before. And it feels like it's it was I think it was Hammy Fiver actually who got binned in that point and then got sent off, I think. So it's like, there's blame there, but otherwise, like that situation is it's a freak situation, and it normally is a case of injuries as well. So it seems harsh to punish a side for injuries and make them go down to 13. I think, and that's what we had such an issue with. But again, it's one of those things that rarely comes up. So when it does, it's always going to be a bit of a nightmare. And look, it's not the first time that the French have this sort of controversy with scrums and forwards going off, and they've done it before. They've got history with that. I remember that game with Wales when the game went on for about 22 minutes after full time, and they just kept getting penalties after penalties, and it was players going off left, right, and centre in the front row, and they were bringing on everybody. So, having been a ref myself before with these sort of situations with teams losing front row and not having enough and not knowing who's come on and who's gone off, like it's just a mess, and it's very hard with this year. So my yeah,
Definitely one of those. Definitely one of those parts of the rugby law book that I think has to be refined a bit, has to be made a bit more clear. But it did make for a very entertaining game because I was chuckling to myself watching the game, so I will give them that. Especially Makalu just absolutely having a mare of a time. We'll move on. Saracens at home versus Lyon. They get a win after their battering at the hand of Bordeaux, 39-24, taking out a bit of frustration on the other French team there. And then on the Sunday, we had Sale hosting La Rochelle in what I predicted not to be an absolute blowout, and it was an absolute blowout. But La Rochelle predictably do get the win, 37-24. They're finding their usual form in the sort of tail end of this competition because they were looking a bit shaky in that first game against Leinster, and then that game away to the Stormers. You thought, Christ, what's happened to La Rochelle? But I think it's safe to say that they're back. And then another game of note I'd like to say is Toulouse versus Bath, because this was, it ends 31-19, Toulouse getting a comfortable win, all thanks to just the absolute, I can't even describe what watching Anton Dupont and Thomas Ramos is like. Because and I will say, like, we're gonna look back on these players when we're older, and we're gonna think we watched Anton Dupont and Thomas Ramos in the form of their life, and it was glorious, in this game. Bath gave it a hell of a good go, and it was all tied up 19-19 for quite a duration. But then Malia goes over, Ramos goes over with just a shithouse try if I've ever seen one, and Toulouse do Toulouse things, really.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I mean, Bath have been fantastic, haven't they, this season? They've been fantastic in this competition. I think they'll be a serious threat as well going forward, and they more than match Toulouse for large parts of that game, and sort of they come pretty close to getting a losing bonus point in the end. Which did that deny them a home quarter final, a home round of 16? Was it? They missed out on something by getting a bonus point.
It depended on another fixture as well. Yeah, I think it depended on another fixture as well. We'll get half to bring up the round of 16.
I've already got it, mate. Bath are playing away.
Yeah, I think it bonus point. I think if they got a losing bonus point or they got any point,
they ended up being 9th seed. So
yeah. Well, that's harsh, isn't it? Given how well they've done.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. There are some very confusing and tasty fixtures in this. So,
but we'll move on to the final fixture. The upset fixture that no one saw coming was Bayonne absolutely demolishing Exeter Chiefs, 40 points to 17. Murray was not too impressed because his beloved schoolboys from Exeter and Henry Slade got absolutely demolished by Bayonne. What happened there? But yeah, I'll let you.
As well.
What's that?
2 tries for Federico Mori, the Italian centre as well.
Yeah, those Italian internationals looking scary. I think we spoke about Marcello on the other. When was it? I think it was the Benetton versus someone game. But when he was just, I said in the podcast that he looked unplayable in parts of that game.
He is a freak, mate. He is a freak.
But enough swanning over Italians, as I do enough of that in my spare time. We'll move on. Harv, do you wanna quickly go over our round of 16 fixtures for the Champions Cup, and then we'll move on to a little bit of a preview for the upcoming. Well, it's not a big deal. It's just Six Nations, but yeah.
I'm gonna dismiss what you just said. Not that this will matter to you boys, because only one of our teams are in this. So Toulouse will play Racing.
Okay.
And the winner will either play Exeter or Bath. So we could get another Toulouse Bath.
Okay.
I would put my money on that 100%. Bath to beat Exeter. Harlequins Glasgow. We've got them at home. Hopefully, finally, we can actually win a European knockout game for once. But we have the possibility of either playing Bordeaux or Saracens.
Whoa, I swear they've played each other before.
What, Harlequins Saracens? Yeah, plenty of times, mate.
Just the fact that Bordeaux and it's exactly the same fixture. Saracens are going to have to relive that nightmare and go to Bordeaux again in a knockout game.
Well, you absolutely love the next one. We have Northampton versus Munster.
Would you believe it?
It's not where it ends. We have Bulls Lyon.
Again.
Stormers versus La Rochelle.
Wow. Honestly,
you probably know which one's the last one. It's Leinster versus Leicester.
They've hit the nail on the head with these fixtures. They really have. Bring them for riots.
Yeah, I did see the other day. I think someone suggested that they do it depending on where you actually finish in your actual pool.
Yeah.
Obviously, like similar to how they do it in the World Cup, which makes so much more sense because
that's what I would have thought.
The amount of fixtures that are, happening again are stupid.
And we've talked. Oh, sorry, carry on.
It's just like, I've seen a lot of comment, and it's a really good point that anyone that doesn't necessarily watch rugby sort of avidly or is a bit of a casual fan, you look at this round of 16 after maybe looking at the results from the final round, you look at the group stage and you think, why on earth are their teams playing each other again? Like, it's another case of rugby just shooting itself in the foot.
Yeah,
again.
I think
it's stupid.
I've criticised the format of this competition tons because the last 2 years were awful with that massive table and 4 fixtures against 2 teams. This is an improvement, but I think you either need to do it randomly, so just drawing teams against each other.
Yes, that's what we need. Just throw all the teams in a hat and pick them
exactly.
out.
You see this in football, FA Cup, Champions League.
Be great. Imagine that, like a live draw as well.
Exactly. Get a celebrity, swirl the balls around, pick it out. So yeah, I think that's probably more needed. If not, have it a bit more structured in terms of.
The real question is which celebrity are you getting in to pick out the.
You need to have a celebrity who's relevant to rugby as well.
Henry Cavill.
I was going to go Jason Momoa, but
I like that. That's okay. But I feel like it'd suit Super Rugby a bit more.
I feel like
Henry Cavill, the Jersey Reds ball. But anyways,
I'm pretty sure. I was about to say, I'm pretty sure I saw Ed Sheeran in an All Blacks top as well. So,
No, yeah, it's good. Champions Challenge Cup. We've got a bit of a break now. I believe round of 16 fixtures are the 5th, 6th, and 7th over that weekend of February. So we have got a bit of a break. But it is all down to the preparation for a certain international competition that takes place every year, called the Six Nations. We've had all our teams released. We're all prepared. There's a lot of hype around this one because a lot of the teams are looking pretty shaken up, pretty different. Boys, what I'll do, Marcello, what I'll do is I'll ask you your opinions on your representative team, so Italy, and then Harv, you can go England. I'll talk about Wales, I suppose, and then we'll just go over the Ireland, France, and Scotland teams as well. So just a few key players who you think are going to stand out this Six Nations.
Right then, Italy. Like you said, I think a lot of the squads in this tournament are sort of seeing that transition from a certain sort of generation of player moving on now to younger teams. We're seeing some massive names of rugby, across the six teams sort of retiring and leaving and going on to new things, and sort of a younger feel to the tournament. So I guess there's a bit more unpredictability and there's a little bit less of an idea of who will win this. I don't actually see there being still think France is probably the best side, but I don't necessarily think they're like the standout winners. You look at this competition and go, that team is definitely winning it. I think there's a little bit more sort of an unknown about it, and I think that plays into our hands a little. Like I've said, our two franchises are in really good form. Obviously, Zebra have only won 2 games of rugby, but given that they didn't win, sort of haven't been used to winning many games at all. So to go into it on the back of 2 wins and some really good performances, we've got some players in really good form. Benetton exactly the same. We've got a squad of players that are in form. We've also, for the first time in what seems like forever, we're having selection headaches. We don't know who that first 15 is. We don't know which is our best 15. We've got players that are all competing across the board. To say that even our captain, sort of his position, is debated a lot. And I was doing my podcast. I'll give it a shout out. Fratelli di Rugby podcast that I do with my 2 other lads, and we were saying that we don't even know if Anja Capuozzo will start. And I think for anyone else outside of Italy, they'd think that's crazy. But within it, there's so much competition. So we're really excited. We've obviously got a new coach in Gonzalo Quesada, who will no doubt bring a bit more organisation and sort of stability to our side. I think in last Six Nations, what we saw from Italy was very chaotic, running from everywhere, which was our downfall at times.
The classic run out of your own 22. We saw that a lot against France and Ireland.
Exactly, and it worked a lot of times, but it also went against us. So last Six Nations, we didn't win a game. I thought ultimately we were probably the most competitive we've ever been in a Six Nations last season. We could have easily come out of that with a couple of wins had things gone our way. So we're really excited. We're looking forward to seeing this young side develop again. I think maybe targeting Wales in Cardiff would probably be our minimum that we'd want. I think we'd want to try and beat Wales in Cardiff, and then push other teams and be as competitive as we were last Six Nations. That's the goal. That's the aim. But Quesada's just come in. He's not had a long time with this squad, and there's going to be some changes, and there's going to be a little bit of a change to the style of play that you see from Italy this season. But we're confident. Players are in good form, and mood is good. So fingers crossed, Quesada's reign starts in impressive fashion. But we shall see.
One thing I will say about Italy, which I think does benefit them ahead of some other teams in this competition, mainly sort of England and Wales, I'd say so more. is the fact that, yes, you have a lot of young talent coming in, a lot of fresh players come in, but you also have that core of the squad. You also have those players who have been to the World Cup, who have been to the Six Nations before. You've got, and they are quite young themselves, but they are experienced at the same time. So you've still got that core. So you're not completely changed. I mean, I think the biggest change for you is going to be that coaching change, and we'll have to see sort of how that affects your style of play going to the Six Nations compared to how you went into the last two. I'd say have been sort of these rise, but talking about mixed up squads, England is probably the squad that is getting the most attention for a few key players that have been named. I mean, who are you looking forward to? Because England is probably the squad that I'm most excited about seeing what they can do.
I think this is probably the biggest change I've ever seen in an England squad for as long as I've been watching rugby. We've now got this opportunity with Steve Borthwick to start something new, something that was going wrong with Eddie Jones, and Borthwick kind of had to pick up the pieces a little bit, which was unfair. And I think a lot of people were quick to judge him, which was completely wrong. But that World Cup cycle's gone. This is a new one. We can start afresh. A lot of old players have either retired or not coming back into the squad. Obviously, we all know what's happened with Owen Farrell. He's gone off. He took a step back from the England squad, and now he's going to France next year. Courtney Law's retired. A load of retirements as well. So this is a new look squad with a lot of young players that I believe Eddie failed to bring in at the start. I think my biggest interest, and something that we've been talking about for ages, is the 10 shirt.
Yeah.
Who will that be? We have, George Ford, George Furbank, Marcus Smith, Finn Smith. So again, four very good players who are playing some very, very good rugby at their respective clubs. If I had to edge it to someone, and this is out of bias as well, it would be Marcus Smith.
Yeah.
I think George Ford has played exceptionally well. Again, we can talk all we like about his heroics at the World Cup. He's getting on a bit, isn't he? He's getting towards the end of his career. He's not going to be in there for much longer. Borthwick needs a 10 that he can rely on for years and years and years, however long he's in the job. So I think that for me, that man is Marcus Smith. Give Finn Smith his minutes because, again, there's no point in just bringing back. There's no point in just bringing through one young fly off. Apart from that, there's a lot of new look names which I'm very excited to have. Ben Urbano has been someone that I've really, really fancied in the Premiership for ages and ages and ages, and to actually finally get to wear the rose is, a massive, massive achievement. Chandler Cunningham South has been incredible for Quins this year, so fully deserves the call up. I mean, the game he played against Ulster, if you just look this weekend, was incredible as well. Emmanuel Feiyu-Aboso.
Oh, what a steal that was! The Cardiff boy.
I was about to say we've done a couple steals from Wales and Scotland. So yeah, ball's in our court now. I think we've just got to utilise that back line. I don't know if Borthwick wants to go with a bit more of a running back line. England has played this really traditional structured rugby for years and years upon years upon years. Eddie Jones played the same rugby all of the time, and I don't know whether now's the time to kind of switch it up.
I think with Marcus Smith at the helm, and now the quality that you've brought in from these players from the Premiership, these players are on top form. You have such an electric. Well, you have the potential for such an electric backline now.
Yeah. It's
all about how Borthwick wants to try and play. We saw in the World Cup that it was a pretty. I mean, it was effective in terms of it produced wins, but I think if England want to get the best out of Marcus Smith, and if you can try and get the best out of Marcus Smith, then you're going to have a good running team. And I think the players they've picked, surely that's how they have to go, because there's too much attacking prowess to sort of play a sort of 12-man game anymore. So I think they've got to use those players, because there's so much quality there.
No, exactly. And I think, now's the time to start kind of playing sexy rugby, and to utilize some of those players who have been electric in Premiership. You see a lot of these Premiership sides have utilized these electric backs. So again, Marcus Smith, Danny Kerr, if you can use that chemistry they've already got. Even so, I believe, there we go, look for his name, Alex Mitchell. I definitely back him to be playing nine.
I was going to say, I think
as well.
with Northampton's form, it's very hard to look past Alex Mitchell in that starting 9 jersey.
Ben Spencer as well at Bath.
Yeah, it's a bit of a headache.
Playing so well.
The 9 shirt will be hard to look out for, but I'd say the same I said for the 10 shirt. They need someone who they can place there for years and nurture, instead of just playing lads that are based on experience. Obviously, what we've seen from Borthwick before with this England squad, experience was kind of his only saving grace because of the situation he was thrust into. When you've got the chance to start again and rip up the rule book, then I think Alex Mitchell, Marcus Smith, that's the way you go for your 9-10 combo.
I like it. I'll try my best to act excited. And listen, I'm not gonna lie. Listen, everybody knows.
Come on, you got to be excited. Like I've got a Welsh dad, so I'm a bit Welsh too. So all that there's so much youth in that team that you got to be excited about some of those young players. I mean, I'd rather see all of this young squad than a load of old has-beens. So
I'll tell you what it is for me. Is this obviously I've lived in Wales for 12 years now, pretty much. I've gone through my sort of senior schooling and whatnot here and whatnot. Listen, I do have a soft spot for Wales. I do, because I live here. But I find it hard to get excited for this squad as a whole, mainly based off of just the regional performances from the teams like Ospreys, Cardiff, Scarlets, and the Dragons. And I think it's actually, and I will say, it's not just me, it's people generally, because I mean, rugby is pretty much one of the main conversation topics around my parts anyway. I live sort of in West Wales, Carmarthenshire, which is sort of like a Scarlets hot area, and Scarlets are shocking at the moment. So yeah, there's not much positive things to say about rugby, but from what I've gathered, no one's really excited about this team, which I think is disappointing, because, like you said, there is a lot of young talent in this team. But I think for people for it to sort of click with people, they have to perform well. They have to perform well, and I mean, listen, you've got another new captain with Jack Morgan being out. We had Dab Jenkins, captain of Exeter Chiefs. He's 21. He's a brilliant player. He leads by example. For me, I thought maybe a little bit too young to be captaining. I know Wales has a history of young captains, but I think it's almost like you're trying to recreate a Sam Warburton. I'm not too sure if lightning strikes twice. I think Jack Morgan is the closest that you've come to it. But overall, I don't know. It's probably just as shaken up as the England squad, but it doesn't feel as exciting because you haven't seen the players performing week on, week out in their domestic competition. But saying that, I mean, I will go through a few key players because there are some. Ioan Lloyd from the Scarlets, as poor of a season as they've had, he's looking like a promising prospect at fly half. Also, Scarlets, Tom Rogers, in the absence of a Louis Rees-Zammit, because that's probably, do you know what? That's the biggest story about this Welsh squad, is that there's no Louis Rees-Zammit. I think that's overshadowed the whole squad naming as a whole. But Tom Rogers from the Scarlets, I mean, I've been watching him for a few seasons now on my trips down to Parc y Scarlets in Llanelli. He's always been a player that I thought, you know what, give him a few more seasons and he'll be in that red jersey, and he's been given his shot now. One player that's been on top form for Cardiff is Mason Grady. He's been looking equally deadly in the centres or on the wing. So I think if Gatland can put his pieces together, and if Gatland can pick the right style of game for the players that he's chosen, I think Wales can perform the Six Nations. What I will think there's a danger of falling into is playing a style of rugby that Wales maybe and Warren Gatland may be more used to playing with these players. I don't think will work. But, you go back to like Warren Ball and whatnot, and how Wales played in the Six Nations, not in the Six Nations, sorry, in the World Cup, a very kick-dominated game, because they had the likes of Biggar, Anscombe, they had those players to be able to control. I don't think it's going to go well for them. So I think it's either pick the right players for the start in 23 and make sure you have a game plan that suits those young players. Otherwise, I just think it's going to be more of the same for Wales this year in the Six Nations. But I'm excited to see what they can do.
If there's one team who has Wales, the regions haven't played well in Wales, haven't competed with the big clubs for decades.
No.
Let's be fair. And what is one team? Wales have always managed to somehow find form when it comes to a Six Nations tournament. They are one side that, especially under Gatland, have always managed to forget whatever's happening with the regions. The regions have been in the mud financially, on the pitch, off the pitch. Everything that could go wrong with Welsh rugby seems to go on. And then when it comes to a Six Nations, they somehow pull something out the bag. And
I hope they do.
And they've done that, but I think with the sort of squad they have, the inexperience, the youth, and like you said, is Gatland capable of playing an expansive game? Or I just think
biggest worry for Wales.
I think there's such a mix of player there, and Wales are still transitioning through this Gatland to maybe what might happen after Gatland type thing. And I think in the meantime, it's what can Gatland do with the players he has available. I don't think they'll be competing at the top end of the table, but
no.
Like he said in his press conference yesterday, people have doubted Wales and have had their pants pulled down. So, you can they're one side you can't write off.
No, I swear you can't. It's Wales. Like historically, you can't write them off. We'll go over, and I think I think I want to start with Ireland, because Ireland not only the biggest talking point is Johnny Sexton, and I think the biggest talking point is who in Ireland out of those fly-off options, who's taken that starting jersey, because I don't think Andy Farrell has a clue yet. Whereas England, yes, you're missing Owen Farrell. You pretty much have, right, it's either going to be Marcus Smith or it's either going to be George Ford starting. Interchangeable, both are quality players, that are proven to be able to do the job. Andy Farrell has a bit of a headache on his hands, where I feel like he's going to have to either just pick one and stick with one, or he's going to have to rotate throughout the Six Nations and find which one works best.
Sam
Prendergast.
That's what I said. I said it, I think last week. I said, I honestly, with his form with Leinster, he is the second coming of Johnny Sexton for me.
I was about to say, you only have to go back to his school career to look at how class he's been throughout the years.
And it's like, people say, oh, he's too young. He's too young to be in that Ireland starting 10 jersey. Just do it. Just do it. And it's also the fact that you got to think about that 4-year cycle now. If Andy Farrell can invest in a player like Sam Prendergast now, just think what we could be looking at heading into future Six Nations in the next World Cup. But yeah, and obviously there is another big headache for Ireland, because they've had a bit of an injury crisis where you've got no Mac Hansen. So that's brought in the possibility of players like Kelvin Nash from Munster been named in the squad. You've got a little bit more variety in that backline where new players have been forced to come in. Jordan Lama as well, he's been called up. So otherwise, I mean, Peter O'Mahony been named as captain. I think that was a given. I think anybody could have predicted that.
It's experience, isn't it? Like,
it's the experience.
And when you've got a new look squad, you need at least someone experienced to balance it out and someone experienced to lead them. And I think Peter O'Mahony is
in terms of like that starting 23 for Ireland. I don't think it's going to be too new look, to be honest. I don't think there's going to be much difference apart from a few positions where you've had apart from that 10 jersey, and apart from a few positions in the back line. Honestly, I think it's going to be more of the same. I think it's going to be more of the same.
The forwards will be fairly unchanged.
Yeah.
I mean, the only big change there will be, I think Ryan Baird deserves some more starts in the back row because he's been unbelievable for Leinster. And when he gets ball in hand and when he gets a bit of space, he looks like a bloody well outside centre sprinting down the field. So, it'll be an interesting one. I think Andy Farrell will be tempted to keep it more or less the same, because obviously he has a big tour coming up this year as well, heading off to South Africa. Ireland are going to want to keep their good record against South Africa as well. So I think for the Six Nations, he's going to want to keep it mainly the same and build off that.
That 10 position, obviously, arguably classed the most important position on the pitch, and without Sexton Mark sort of commanding the ship, I imagine there to be a little bit of a drop off.
This is what I said. I don't think Ireland are going to be as competitive. They're obviously still going to be competitive as Ireland. They're a quality strength team. I don't think Ireland are going to win it. But we'll go on to a few predictions of how we think it's going to pan out. I don't think Ireland are going to win it. I don't think there's going to be a Grand Slam this year, personally. I think we're due a Grand Slam this year. But
who beats France? That's what I'd say. I still don't.
See, I'd agree with you, and my only answer would be maybe Ireland, and I'll get on to talking about Scotland, but I think Scotland have somewhat of a chance this year.
No, I'm sick of this narrative. I'm sick of this. Scotland might do it.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't want to be the one to say it.
8 years it's been like, this is Scotland's year. It's been Scotland's year for a long.
Yeah, you even see the bloody Netflix trailer.
Yeah.
Look at the Netflix trailer, and they've gone, we think Scotland can go all the way this year. They're trying to get new fans into that as well.
Yeah. Sorry, Murray, but mate, Scotland, no.
He's not here this week. We can say what he likes.
Sorry, Murray. Yeah. I tried so
He's gonna be editing this, just like delete it all.
I tried to keep your spirit alive. Well, we might as well talk about it now, because the Scotland squad is one that really it was no surprises really.
No, Darcy Graham. Darcy Graham's out injured, isn't he?
No Hamish Watson.
No, that was quite surprising for me anyway.
But I mean, I think the biggest mix-up has been the naming the co-captains Finn Russell and Rory Darge, as opposed to Jamie Ritchie. He's been stripped of his captaincy role, and it's been given to the young gun Rory Darge, and obviously the maverick that is Finn Russell. Now, I'll just for me, the main reason why I could see Scotland competing better this year is the fact that they are pretty much more or less unchanged in that core squad. They've not changed enough to affect them in terms of they're going to have to find a new game style to play. It's going to be a new structure. It's going to be new players playing together. Their form last Six Nations, I mean, they beat England as usual. We
should have beat them. We should have beaten them.
Then Blair Kinghorn gave the ball to Duan van der Merwe, and he did a try. But yeah, that passage of play for Italy, a metre or so out from the try line. And then the referee blows his whistle.
He didn't give us a penalty. We should have had a penalty as well.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter about it.
Honestly,
but...
I can actually still see the pain in your eyes from it.
Yeah. Still there, man.
But no, listen, I think Scotland will do all right. I want Scotland to do all right because honestly, if Ireland or France win the Six Nations again, I'm gonna cry because I'm bored of it. I don't want it to happen. Otherwise, there's not much to say about this.
I was going to say, to be honest, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If it ain't broke, that's exactly what I'm saying.
I think, one of the only reasons I see them competing to actually win the Six Nations this year is, well, I was going to say at the expense of other teams.
Sure.
A lot of teams are in transition. Actually, most teams are in transition. I'd say Italy have only gone from strength to strength, but I believe England, Wales, and Ireland are currently having a bit of a. They're in a bit of an unknown.
They are in the biggest transition. I feel like Ireland more so for just that massive gaping hole in the 10 jersey.
France realistically should be the strongest side on paper. It's just It's just a few numbers here and there, a few important numbers. That's the worst part, though.
But is Dupont missing really going to weaken France to the point that they're going to?
No, it's not. It's not going to weaken them to the point where they, completely crumble. I just think that he is just such an integral part. I mean, he is, in my eyes, the best player in the world.
I'd agree. I wouldn't argue that. I wouldn't argue that.
I still think that squad is good. That squad is on paper is still the best squad. And
100%. I just think there's on paper is one thing, on the field is another.
Yeah, fair enough. I think with Scotland, look, Finn Russell has to have a massive role in every single game he plays for Scotland to stand a chance. And I think that is probably the only criticism I've ever had of him is that in those odd, big games that Scotland have when, I don't know, they lose to Ireland or France or in those big games, he obviously has to play well for all 5 games for Scotland to have a chance.
Finn Russell has to have a blinder 5 games in a row.
Yeah, it's a couple of assists a game, 10, 12 points a game, that sort of thing to give Scotland a chance because, I mean, look, I'm not going to say it because I'm sick of saying it. But if Scotland are going to do it, then Finn Russell has to. If Scotland win it, it will be because Finn Russell's player of the tournament. I think that's
Scotland have the pieces to do well, but it is very much reliant on how Finn Russell uses them.
I will say, as good as Finn Russell is, he plays that maverick character and he plays it so well. But whether he can consistently do it all the time, that's been my one.
And in the pressure situations against the teams
if he is cool, calm, confident, he plays his best. But can he do it when his back's up against the wall?
We have never seen that before from him. Yes,
not for a full 6 nations, not for a full tournament.
We've never seen
because whenever we've seen it, he's got the confidence and he's got the composure to run the ball and do these absolutely amazing things. But when you actually have to get down to nitty-gritty rugby in proper test matches, I'm talking purist test matches, like the 20 pointers.
Yeah. But it's also that sort of thing. Can he, in bad conditions on a windy, wet day, score 5 penalties for Scotland to win a game 15-10 type thing? Is he capable of putting in a performance like that someone like Johnny Sexton or Owen Farrell would do? Can he just play a game where he doesn't do all the flary things and just play sensible?
Test rugby's hard. Test rugby's completely different to anything you've ever played before.
And the thing is, teams are going to know this, and Finn Russell is probably going to be the player with the biggest target on his back this tournament, I'll argue. Because if there's any one man who is so integral to how his team perform on the day, it's Finn Russell for Scotland, and that is going to put the biggest target on his back out of any player in the Six Nations.
Yeah, great.
We'll quickly talk about France because we've already said that they are looking like the strongest team. I mean, you especially if you've been following the top 14, if you've been following the European competitions, you've been following the French teams. Yeah, you look at that squad and the first thing you think is, where's Untermacht, where's Dupont, what's going on? There's no Jalanche, whatnot. But then you have a look at the players who are there instead of them, and you're like, oh, okay, fair enough. There's nothing to worry about. You've got Jalibert in that 10 jersey. You've got Ramos, who's been playing 10 for Toulouse. I doubt they'll use him at 10, but, he's been looking more than comfortable there. And then in the scrum half position, like I said, you've got Maxime Lucu, you've got Legaric. Honestly, there's nothing to worry about, especially with players like Penaud and Bialberry on the wings. There's a strong possibility France are going to run away with this tournament.
French rugby is probably in its best ever position. I'm not just talking the national side. I'm talking from the bottom up.
The top 14, in my opinion, is the best domestic league in the world by far.
No, exactly.
But then the Pro D2 is also by far and away streets clear of any second division.
Oh, and then see that with big players like George North going over to Province or whatever it's called. He's going to money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but they pay their players well. It's exciting to be playing French rugby at this moment. And honestly, anyone that's gone over to France, Arundel, Farrell, just name some England players, I don't blame them.
No,
I do not blame them at all.
No, 100%. And right now, I mean, you did say why wouldn't people want to play in France right now? Those teams like La Rochelle, the Toulouses, the Toulons, the Racing 92s. Those are the teams that players right now are thinking, I want to go play for them because they're doing something. Because they're in a league.
You want to play good rugby against good teams in good contests and for loads of money. Why would you not want to go? It's literally got everything. Exactly. And lifestyle, that's not even taken into account the lifestyle, food, the weather.
Oh, mate,
support in general, the support in the top 14, their attendance to games is brilliant.
At this point, I would sacrifice a Premiership career just to sit on the bench at a French team and just read a book on the Riviera. That would be... And you're getting paid a decent amount as well.
Eating bread and cheese and sipping coffee. And,
wine on the weekend. Forget the shower beers after the game. It's all the wine.
Yeah,
man.
It's a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc in the shower.
Yeah, you think about it from Farrell's point of view, and you think he gets to leave all of this hatred he seems to have in England and all of the abuse, all of the spotlight being on him for so long, and he's England's top point scorer of all time. He's literally not lifted a World Cup, but he's done everything he could have possibly done for an England side. He's gone through all of that, and now he gets to go and spend a few years in France, earn a load of money, take his family out there, have a lovely life, and get away from it all. I think it's just the best possible thing he could have done.
I will say it did shock me because, obviously Owen Farrell has been a one-club man for the past 15 years. He's been at Saracens. He came through their system. And from that, he became, which I've argued on this podcast before, England's not just greatest ever fly half, greatest ever player. For me, anyway, he's the highest point scorer. And how long has there been where England rugby Owen Farrell's been that guy? He's been that guy in the 10 jersey, pulling the strings for England. It's a shame to see him go because I think it's always a shame to see a player who's invested so much into one club leave, even if that club is Saracens. But honestly, I'm so excited to see Owen Farrell in the top 14 and playing for Racing. You look at the roster fly-offs that Racing have had.
For me, there were two viable options for Owen Farrell's whereabouts because he wasn't sticking around any longer.
No.
And that was Super League, go play at Wigan like his dad did because he would be treated like an absolute king. But
Yeah.
you could go to France, rugby union still, get the money.
More money. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was an incentive. Of course, Wigan they treat him so well, but at the end of the day, you know, there's nowhere near as much money in league as there is in French union anyway.
No,
I think
100%.
players coming towards the end of their career, you just think go and make as much money as you can in the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, you've seen. I mean, it's the same in all sports. The footballers going to Saudi, the golfers going to live. You know, they're coming towards the end of their careers. They just want as much money as possible before they can just live off the rest of their lives sounder.
100%. We've got one more point to cover, and we discussed it. Me and Murray slightly discussed it, but it's sort of come to light a bit more. The big hype and the big commotion about it has died down somewhat, and that is Louis Rees-Zammit making his move into the international player pathway for the NFL. We've seen players do it before. Christian Wade is the first one who comes to mind. He played for the Bills, did all right, ended up coming back to Union, back to Racing. I think, Harv, you said we were having a discussion about it on the chat, and you said all the best to him. I hope he makes, I hope he does well. I hope he makes a bag.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm an NFL fan, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think the prospect of seeing a rugby boy going over to the NFL would be wonderful, especially as an NFL fan in the UK. That would be pretty exciting to see. Again, same as Owen Farrell, I don't blame him. I think it's a different situation, seeing as he's in the middle of his career. He's definitely one of Wales' standout players, and as much shit as I've given him, he is a star player. He is a wonderful, wonderful player. So he can go to the NFL. He's still making, I think, 50K just by doing the pathway. 300K if he makes a practice squad, and 800K if he makes the full roster, which that's enticing. Incredibly enticing.
My opinion of the matter has changed somewhat, because initially I was like, what the hell is he thinking? He is the star boy of Wales right now. He has the potential of a glorious career, and he has the potential to become one of the best to put on the Welsh jersey. Blah de blah de blah de blah. And now I was in the mindset of he's never going to make it. There's too much competition in the NFL. You know, he's not even going to get into a draft. But now I've sort of sat down and thought about it. I thought, you know what? Just fair play to the guy. Just do it. I think he's been getting a lot of hate. I just want to point out he's been getting a hell of a lot of hate.
No, but honestly, I think that half of that is almost a rugby fan's insecurity.
Yeah,
they know
that was my initial reaction to it.
Yeah.
It was probably me as a rugby fan seeing a rugby player as high profile as Rees-Zammit switching trades to American football. I think that hurt.
But you need to realise that the sport is in a crisis, and more players are going to leave because the NFL is one of the biggest sports leagues in the world. It's got so much money. It's got, you know, the lights, the TV, the fans. It is so much bigger than rugby in this country. So I honestly do not blame him. It's such a, if he's got the opportunity, he should really go and do it. I think he was either trying out as a running back or a wide receiver. He's too big for running back. There are skills that he's going to have to learn over the way. It is a completely different sport.
Yeah.
But he has got the makings to be an NFL player. I think from what we've seen, the way he runs on the attack is so beneficial to an NFL team that I think if he makes it work, that might be his rugby union career on.
Yeah, I think my initial reaction was similar to Cam's. Like, I was a bit like, what are you doing? And I think for a lot of people in Wales, like rugby is such a huge deal in Wales, like it's the be all and end all, and for a lot of the Welsh public was basically like he's turning his back on Wales type thing. So I think that's where the sort of the hate and the people not understanding it.
The Welsh public felt betrayed.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And I think that's fair enough. But when you take everything into consideration, we've talked about where rugby is at the moment. Like the Premiership has already lost 3 clubs in the past 18 months for financial problems. Rugby in general is struggling. Welsh rugby is really struggling. Why? Everything in terms of financial security, like the rugby career, when it ends, it's not like you can live off your rugby. You can't live off money that you earn in rugby for the rest of your life. Like the money isn't there for that.
Yeah.
So when you look at it and you see what he's going to go and do, which won't be a walk in the park by any stretch. I think people are assuming that he's just going to go there, play a few games, and come back after earning a couple of £1 million. Like it doesn't work like that.
No.
I imagine it's going to be. I don't know the process, but I imagine I've seen a lot of people say it's going to be quite a long and lonely journey for him in the early stages of going through this pathway. So, and he's clearly a marketable player. Like I don't know if you've seen the documentary he did, where he clearly considers himself a bit of a
one of the best. He's the dog's
pretty boy. He's a pretty boy. He's almost like a Cristiano Ronaldo of rugby type thing. Like he's clearly considers himself like that. So he's clearly looked at himself and thinking, I can make money, and I think his family have probably looked at that and thought the same. That's another matter. There's the opportunity for him to go and make some serious money, but also make a career of it. My initial thinking is that I'm not sure it'll work, and he probably comes back to rugby in a couple of years' time anyway. But even if that does happen, he comes back having made a fair bit of op. So
as long as he doesn't go into it thinking it's going to be a breeze.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that would be up to the people around him to make sure he doesn't do that.
Yeah,
I think him personally, I think he probably thinks he can.
If he's driven enough to really think that I want to be not just an NFL player, I want to be a great NFL player, he will put in the work. Again, it is a completely different sport. It works. You can't just go straight from rugby and think, oh, this is just, same thing.
Just rugby with lads,
Yeah, it's not. It's completely different. And there are lads in those leagues that have been playing since school and have had to try out at school and make the top teams and get scouted into colleges, the best colleges in the country. It is such a strenuous process. And ultimately, obviously, with the higher population, there's a much larger player pool to pick from.
Oh, that was my point.
There's unlike rugby where you've got teams in so many different countries. The NFL is 32 teams.
Yeah,
that's 32 teams of the best players in the world, of the best 53 players in the world.
Yeah, and it's stats based, isn't it, as well? So it's like you can't in the NFL. Everything is so heavily based on your numbers that if you have a couple of quiet games, all of a sudden you're under pressure, and there'll be the coaches and people, will be looking at his stats and thinking,
the NFL's ruthless.
Can't be quiet. You can't have quiet games. Like you have to be hitting certain numbers every single game. Like everything there's so much scrutiny on stats that you've got nowhere to hide. Like you've literally got nowhere to hide. You have to hit the numbers every single game, or else they'll replace you.
The NFL is ruthless. You see, even so you see the kickers, right? That is probably the easiest numbers or the least numbers you have to work with. You miss 2 kicks, you're cut.
Harry Mallander's gone, isn't he? He's gone as a kicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that pretty much about covers it. I think we've covered every point we need to. We probably missed something massive, but we'll leave it there for today, boys. And for you guys watching, we had a bit of a longer episode tonight. Obviously, we had to because previewing the Six Nations, it's a big deal. Comes around once a year. But next week we'll be back. I think we've only really got some like Premiership games, whatnot, coming next week. So it'll be back to normal more so next week, and then we'll be kicking off into the Six Nations. And I think that's what everyone's excited about. And we will be once again opening a Six Nations Fantasy League on the app. So obviously for all of you to join and try your hand at finishing top of that. But as always, follow us on all our platforms, Instagram, Murray's on LinkedIn, and our TikTok. Follow Marcello on TikTok as well. And preferably don't follow any of Harv's platforms. It's not going to be good for you. But anyway, cheers for watching, guys, and we will catch you again next week.